What's up, everybody, and how you doing today? Well, good. Glad to hear it. It's Carpo again. Here I have a nice little surface, and I've got my nugs, and I'm going to do some trimming here. So I'm going to do one of my trim and chat videos, and got some nice buds that I need to deal with here. So, while I was out here doing this for a while, I had this question that popped up into my mind. The question was, is there a shortcut to enlightenment? And that's kind of a joke in the sense that, the first question comes to mind is, what the hell is enlightenment? So enlightenment is awareness, right, of the world around us. And let me see if I can define it. Enlightenment would be being aware enough of the world that we live in order to live in harmony with it. I mean, I don't really know how else to put it. It seems that the word enlightenment has so many connotations that, for example, when I was young and I heard the word enlightenment, I would picture a guru sitting there, like with his legs crossed, meditating. Of course, as I got older, I realized that was nothing. Had nothing to do with enlightenment any more than the fact of that if a person was enlightened, they would be more likely to have that type of demeanor, if that makes sense. But that's only in Eastern mysticism, in Eastern culture. So, for where we are right now in our Western world, it's not conducive with the way that we do things to sit in a cave and meditate, or go on some kind of crazy sabbatical, or fasting. I mean, we've got to work, we've got to live. So when we look at these ancient cultures and their mystical, enlightened state of being that we like to think they had, or at least some of them, one asks ourselves, is there a shortcut to that enlightenment? Now, it sounds like kind of a joke, but I guess my short answer to that question would be no, that only wisdom can bring enlightenment. So, in other words, if a group of people, let's say a group of enlightened individuals, were sitting around talking, and a younger man came into the fold, they brought him into the group. They could not enlighten him merely by telling him things, if that makes sense. So there's no book that a person can open to understand the depths of life. There's no person that can be a guru to explain to you what life, how to live in an enlightened state. And here I am talking about it, and I don't even know what it is. I mean, I consider myself enlightened in many ways, but not, if enlightened has to be an actual descriptive word that describes a state of being, I would say that I have a hard time believing that anyone is completely enlightened to the point where nothing in this world phases them, because I believe that part of what enlightenment means is accepting everything. It's being an island in this crazy ocean. So, a shortcut might be, for some people, and this is something that always comes to mind, is psychedelics. And I've had discussions with people in the past, many years past, over and over, about whether or not you can get, become enlightened through psychedelics. And no, my firm answer is no, absolutely not. However, you can look at psychedelics as, if you see enlightenment as a hallway and a doorway to walk through, then you can see the psychedelics as kind of a prop to hold that door open temporarily. And what you're looking for is a long-term way of thinking that can help you in your life, which takes time. It takes practice. You have to work up to it. But when we take psychedelics, it opens that door and gives us a glimpse of how we could be and could feel. And those who have taken enough psychedelics know that that state is meant to be temporary. It's not meant to be permanent. It would be a horrible thing to be always in a state of psychedelic, craziness, because it's like you're stepping out of this reality into into another reality, which is why you go through like this metamorphosis when you take psychedelics, or I do anyway, where I kind of lay down and kind of just hide out for a while, and then I'm reborn into the other reality, I guess. But I don't like to bring psychedelics into the enlightenment conversation, but the reason I do is because it was through my first taking of psychedelics when I was 15 or so, and then I took a lot of LSD back then, well, on the weekends we would eat it. I didn't eat large amounts or fry my brain or anything. We just chose to take some and sit around and think about life. And when you're 15, you got a lot to process. I mean, you see these things that come at you, and they're things that you haven't considered yet in life, Hell, you're a teenager. So I think that those experiences, those moments of psychedelic awareness are the ones that set me on the path to try to seek enlightenment. And I don't use that word ever. People who watch my vids won't hear me ever say anything about being really enlightened, because I think that word just has negative connotations with it now. Not negative in the sense of bad, but when you say enlightened, people kind of roll their eyes, and it's like, what the hell is enlightenment anyway, And so that's a question that I'm posing here, is what is enlightenment, Could you define enlightenment without going to the dictionary? And I'm talking about the personal view, because we each have our own take on what it might be to be enlightened. Enlightened is obviously, by definition, seeing the light, which is, by metaphoric definition, means seeing through the darkness. So, in a sense, it's the ability to filter out those things around us which are negative, those things which cause harm, yet, before I go too far into that, not ignoring them, because ignoring the issues is not going to solve the problems. A different approach, I guess. Maybe the ability to sit and think rationally about something for a while. Maybe not make a hasty comment or decision when we are asked something, or but I guess the question remains, is there a state of being that is enlightened? So let's just make the assumption that there's this state of enlightenment where you're there, right? Well, then what? Is there nothing else to learn? I find that ludicrous. This is why I don't believe that there's any one definition of enlightenment. It's just a combination of elements. It's let's take enlightenment and replace it with growth. Do you have growth? And in that sense, we can see that growth never ends. Growth is a constant state of growth. So, to think that enlightenment will ever end, or that there's a point that you reach, I'm completely speculating here, because obviously if there is a state of enlightenment that is something that is like an aha moment where you're enlightened, I obviously don't have it, so I guess I can't sit and talk about whether or not there is one. But if a person thinks that there is that moment where you're just enlightened, I think the more proper definition of that would be Satori. And Satori is the experience in Eastern folk mysticism and whatnot. Satori is the experience where it's the aha moment, where all of a sudden everything makes sense. And sometimes they only last a brief second. Sometimes it's just a feeling. It might even be, it's kind of like a deja vu. It just pops in and out. But it's such an intense feeling that you can't really ever live it down. It's always something that stays with you. These Satori experiences combine to make a larger version of enlightenment, if you will. And I've had many, many of my most intense Satori experiences while taking psychedelics, namely mushrooms. If people want to know about psychedelics for exploration, I think that mushrooms are the way to go. LSD is fine. But you know, these days, even if you are getting good stuff, my opinion is, I mean, I can get LSD 25, the Sandoz Laboratories recipe. You know, it's really good stuff. It's really clean, but it's not the same as mushrooms, because mushrooms are like the language of the planet. And so being enlightened might mean the consumption of substances in some cases, mind-altering substances, which give us kind of a glimpse of that reality. But it's not about being high. It's not about being in an altered state so much as consuming a plant which is trying to teach you something. Now, I'm a believer in plant teachers. And when we have a problem, we go to a counselor. You know, we talk to someone, make a video, ask a friend or a family member. But how many times do we really consider going into nature and asking nature? Not just saying, nature, what do I do? But rather observing the connections in nature to see how they can be applied to our daily life. And that's, over the last 5 years or so, really been one of my main focuses. When I have a question about the universe, when I want to know what is God, what is existence, I don't go to a book, I don't go to a seminar, I don't go to a guru. I go to nature and I ask her, what do you want? Because it's not about what do I want. And that's a major realization, I think, is when people realize, what does the world want from me?